everyone. Welcome to Men on Fire. My name is Mike Aren, a former mechanic and engineer turned transformational teacher. And each week I'll deliver an inspiring message to help you excavate those repressed inner negative feelings and install new thoughts that will finally allow you to truly become the person you were born to be. Welcome to another episode of Men on Fire here on Soul Mechanic TV and Soul Mechanic Radio. Now, I have a very special guest for you today, and I'm very excited to have her on. She coaches men specifically about sex. So isn't that a wonderful topic to have on today? Her name is Sarrah Rose. She coaches high-performing men who aren't having the best sex of their lives and are serious about optimizing every aspect of themselves to finally have a sex life and relationship as successful as their career. She is a certified men's sex and relationship coach with over 20 years of experience in personal and spiritual development. And she has traveled the world, and in India, she was initiated into Kundalini Yoga, White Tantra, and Kriya Tantra. She then went on to get certified as a sex, love, and relationship coach through the Tantric Institute of Integrated Sexuality. And for the past 9 years, Sarrah has helped thousands of people turn their sexual shame and struggles into the best sex of their lives. And Sarrah has been featured in Men's Health, Cosmopolitan, Vogue, Self, and the New York Post, and more. And all of this has helped her reach millions of people around the world. So please help me say hello to Sarrah Rose. Okay, listeners, as promised, here is Sarrah Rose. Thank you, Sarrah, so much for coming on Men on Fire podcast today. I hope that we'll have a great discussion, and I'm sure the listeners are really listening in to see what you have to tell them today. So I wondered if maybe you could just start off a little bit about telling us about your story, and maybe how the heck did you get involved in the sexual coaching that you have started already and have been so prominent at, if you wouldn't mind telling us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first off, I have to say, I think the name of your podcast is absolutely the best name possible.
Oh, thank you.
When I ran across Men on Fires, as you know, my coaching program is called Man on Fire. So I was like, yes. Oh, he has great taste.
Well, I remember somebody, when I wanted to call it that, somebody did a search for me, and somebody in the podcast realm, and they said, oh, that must be taken. That must be taken. No, it's not. There's a Man on Fire, but there's no Men on Fire as well. There you go.
Perfect.
Yeah, yes.
Awesome. Yeah. So really excited to be here. Thanks for having me. I love doing what I do. And it's actually kind of funny because I was having a discussion with one of my lovers yesterday, and he has another lover who she hasn't experienced a man like her before. He's her first, to give her the level of sex that she's having. Mm-hmm. And she's basically told him, like, you've ruined me, like I'm never going to be able to have sex with another man again. And I told him, I was like, well, my story is like, that's what happened to me. I was like, that's why I teach men now, because, mm-hmm. There are these quote, air quote, evil men out there ruining women with good sex. And then, like,
exactly.
Guys, like, if you don't know these secrets, you're going to be left behind, or she might marry you, but she's going to be remembering the guy that fucked her really well.
That's right. Yeah. You're not going to forget that.
No. So there's my short answer.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. Absolutely. And I'm sure that the man you're speaking of loved hearing that from that other person, as you know, men have egos, and we like to feed that too. And having somebody else say that would be just wonderful.
Absolutely. And I think every man needs to hear that. Every man needs to hear from the woman that he's with that he's the best lover she's ever had.
Even if you lie?
No. No, it needs to be true.
Yeah, it needs to be true. No, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I know after my first marriage ended and I dated a number of women, and it was different because, I was with the same person for 25 years. And then it suddenly changed. And I actually, they taught me some things, I taught them some things, and I thought it was pretty good all around. So that was a growing experience too. So
yeah, it's wonderful when you can learn from the people that you're with.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And there's one that I won't ever forget. Yes.
Right? The one that got away.
Yes. Well, at least as far as the sex was concerned anyway.
Yes.
There were some other reasons that it didn't work out, but
of course,
because of course, sex isn't everything, but it is a large part of our relationships, and it should be. And I remember years ago, my uncle, my cousin and I found some dirty magazines under his mattress, my aunt and his mattress. And we were kind of giggling in the room looking at them. And he came in and then goes, oh, you found those. Well, we better put them back, boys. And then he said, I want you to remember this. If there's no sex in relationship, the relationship is doomed. So I still remember that. I don't know how old we were. I think it was maybe 10 or something, 9 or 10. And I'm going, oh, wow, I wasn't even thinking of that. But we were just happened to look at the pictures, of course. And for some reason, you already knew that was attractive, but you didn't know why or how,
right.
Like at that age. Right. But yeah, so that was an interesting comment even back then. I still remember it.
Well, it's kind of interesting how he made the correlation, right? Like you're looking at porn and he's saying if there's no sex in a relationship, the relationship is doomed. And I'm wondering in his mind, like where the connection to that was like.
Well, yeah, you can go a few different ways. I can only assume that, they looked at it together or whatever, and that somehow that helped their sexual relationship, I'm assuming.
Okay.
But at least that's what I like to assume.
Yes.
So, but yes. So that was interesting as well. So what actually started you getting to be a sex and intimacy coach then? I mean, it was something to do with the relationships you were having and you wanted to just get better at what you were doing, or?
Yes. So I got married super young. I was 18 years old. I was raised evangelical, fundamentalist Christian. So that was very typical of people in that community to get married really young. I was married for 13 years, 2 children, or I guess I was married 12 years. I was with him 13 years. And, that relationship, there was no sexual satisfaction. I didn't have an orgasm the entire time, unless it was me on my own with my vibrator.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I don't remember how old I was the first time I even had an orgasm with the vibrator. I was probably, I don't know, 20, 21, something like that. So it was, it was something that didn't happen very often unless, I was on my own. And I had performance anxiety. He would get mad at me because I didn't orgasm. And so I was like really in my head about it. Like, the whole relationship was very not a healthy state to be in. So that relationship ended. A big part of why it finally ended was because I started down the path of personal development and spiritual development. I started with yoga, and I started going into other modalities that that were just helping me release the conditioning that I had from childhood and the struggles that I had from the marriage that I was in. And I eventually, through my journey, one thing led to another. I found Tantra. And when I started practicing Tantra, I started to actually have some confidence. I started to love myself enough to get out of that relationship. I felt enough, there was finally like something alive in me that wanted more, that said, okay, get out of this. Like there's more for your life. And so I went to India. I got certified to teach Tantra. And hello, New York City.
Well, yeah, a little bit. Well, it was actually a quite good timed honk there.
Yeah, I actually live in the quiet part of the city too. That was one of the things when I was moving back to Manhattan. I was like, I've got to live in the quiet part of the city so that way I can do my job.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I went to India. I got certified to teach Tantra. And when I got back, I was living in Austin at the time. When I got back, I met a man who was also in the same lineage as me. He had been practicing Tantra for like a decade, and he and I became lovers. We were best friends. We were together for 2 years. It was amazing. It felt like that entire 2 years was just one long experience of making love, making magic. It was
Nice.
Yeah, it was beautiful. So much love, so much healing. Really, really incredible. And then when that relationship ended, I was back out in the world of conventional dating and performative sex. And I was like, oh my fucking God, this sucks. I was like, I've got to change this. I've got to do something, So I had already been teaching locally in Austin. And I went ahead and started to scale my business, put it online so I could work with people around the world. I've been doing that since 2017, and I got more and more training. I'm a learner. Like that's my thing. I love to learn. I'm constantly reading. I'm constantly working with other experts and, just expanding my skills so I can be a better coach. So yeah, I mean, that's what my journey has been.
Wonderful. No, I always say that too. I'm a lifelong learner, and I don't want to stop, because there's always something else to learn. We never know enough about what we think we know about already, let alone new things. So that's great. And I think when you talked about your evangelical upbringing too, I read a book a while ago by a lady named Shakti Gawain. I don't know if you have heard the name at all. I think she passed away not that long ago, actually. But she wrote several books, and she was very involved in spiritual and things that revolved around sexual experiences too. And she mentioned in the book that, for example, that sexual energy is everywhere. The universe is made of energy, of course, and the sexual energy is there too. And when it's blocked, for example, and she gave an example of a young girl that is told by her parents, as she becomes a teen and all that, no, you have to, that's no good. You can't do that. You have to wait till you get married. And then suddenly she gets married at some point, but doesn't really know what she should do, or because it's this whole sexual energy that has been pent up, was blocked this whole time. Now it's released, and it may or may not be congruent with her partner. So it's almost you just made me think of that when you mentioned it, and the sexual energy part of it. I'm a strong believer in, because I don't think intimacy is strictly sexual. The energy is everywhere. And I think, even sometimes looking at something like a beautiful flower or a glance in someone's eyes somewhere, just even for, a few seconds. And you could walk away and go, wow, like it was so deep. I almost had a relationship with that person. It happens fleetingly sometimes, and you never know or never prepared for it. But that's also, to me, seems intimate, without the physical portion of that. Anyway, I'm running off too much there. I want to get you talking.
Yeah, you're right though. And intimacy is what we crave as humans. We desire that connection and intimacy.
Absolutely.
We're wired for it from, the early days of humanity.
Yeah, and I think it's a connection of souls as well. Our soul wants to connect with other souls, and as I think I mentioned before, that's the closest connection we can have, is that physical relationship with each other, and it becomes like you mentioned in your relationship with the gentleman that you with tantric relationship there for a couple of years. It's way above what anything else could be, because it was physical, but it was also spiritual, all because you were very congruent with each other, and knew what each other's wanted, and how to feel that and how to do it. So it was just above and beyond, right?
Yes, exactly.
So I wondered, for men, do you see any generalities out there for people that you've coached and people you've dealt with or been with maybe to do with societal pressures or peer pressures, or parents and that sort of thing, that maybe makes them feel certain ways, whether that's sometimes egotistical or sometimes shy? Do you see any of that happening?
Yes, so men have generally have one of two types of conditioning. It's either more along the religious type of upbringing that we already discussed, don't have sex until marriage, one person for life, that type of thing. Or it's the other side of it, which is you're not a man unless you fuck a lot of women. And society is changing. Men are able to express themselves in more of, I guess would be gray area between the two now. But those two extremes really do show up a lot still, even if it's not quite on that level, but there still has been that subtle programming that really does impact them.
Yes. No, I that's what I would expect, because I know guys I've worked with too. There seem to be almost, there's people in the middle, but there's still a lot of extremes as well. So do you think that in order for a man to be better in a relationship, or to actually have a good crack at even having a good relationship with a woman, do you think that they would need to work more on themselves first to become the best person they can be, or in that kind of self-development before the relationship?
I absolutely do. It's so much easier to have a healthy relationship when you have done your self work, when you know who you are, when you know what your triggers are, when you know what your trauma is, the conditioning that you have, when you've worked through a lot of that stuff, and some of it, I've done personal development work for 2 decades now. And I still look at myself. I'm like, oh my God, is it ever going to end? Right. Like, so there's layers and layers and layers, and there's no quote perfect person out there that doesn't have any issues at all. Like, that's just part of the beauty really of humanity, is all of the uniqueness of us. Like, that's our experiences in life are what create who we are today. So I don't have expectations of people that often I'll hear from people like, oh, don't date a project, or I don't date a project. I'm like, you're so fucking egotistical. You're a goddamn project. You're
That's
human.
right.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, we all are to a certain degree, right?
yeah, like we are all a project, right?
Yeah.
like, who's perfect? Whose shit doesn't stink? No one.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I heard that the other day. I hear it a lot actually, and I'm just like, oh my God. So, it's under what does help is when you understand yourself, when you really know yourself, when you faced your demons, when you've like looked your soul eye to eye and been like, all right, yeah, like I see you, I accept you, I get you, I know my feelings, I know my strengths, and owning it all. A lot of people walk around with avoidance. They walk around blaming, projecting onto other people. None of that creates a healthy relationship. When you know yourself, when you take responsibility for your life, that's when you can create a healthy relationship, regardless of your situation.
No, I totally agree. Actually, I just did a little video about self-respect, which goes hand in hand with that. If you can respect yourself, then you don't have to succumb to other people's viewpoints or opinions. You can take them in and make your own mind because you respect yourself enough to make a decision without going into some kind of group or mob style thinking, and just adopting everybody else's opinions like a fish in a school, swimming around with everybody. Have you noticed any differences in either married or single men as far as your coaching and how they differ? Or are they, men kind of still the same, even though they're married?
Yeah, I think people are people. We all have very similar cultural upbringings. I see differences maybe sometimes in men that are from different cultures. But even that, it's like humanity is. We're pretty much the same, and the deep rooted belief systems adopted during childhood
Absolutely.
that were for survival purposes and that made sense at that time. But what happens is we don't do the personal development work to mature emotionally. We stay stuck in that time. So a lot of people, for most people by the age of 6, we've already had all of the experiences that are going to shape the rest of our life. They're just on repeat. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can do work such as the work I do with my clients to get in there and heal that so you have more conscious control over your life. But most people don't. They're just literally on repeat from everything that happened before the age of 6. And so we're walking around in a culture, a society of a lot of 6-year-olds in adult bodies. And,
yes.
the emotional maturity of a 6-year-old, emotional intelligence of a 6-year-old, the wounding, it is a lot of wounding is where people are relating from. And so it's difficult to have really amazing connected sex if you can't connect on the level of the adult that you are now. Like we've got a lot of little kids calling the shots in relationships, calling the shots in the bedroom. And that's not the place for your inner child, your little boy to show up, but when you're not even aware of it, how can you change it?
No. And that's the whole thing, the awareness part, right? I mean, you can't make anybody do anything they don't want to do, but if you can make them aware of what's happening, maybe they'll decide to do some changes on their own, I totally agree with you on that subject as well. But I'm just wondering, yes, I know that, and even, it's been proven scientifically, this like subconscious mind, is at a different brainwave pattern up till ages 6 or 7. And just because it's like a sponge taking everything in, because we need to at that point to learn how to survive. Why are there so many folks that are still in that, they might not be in that brainwave pattern anymore, but Do you not see that there's a lot of them still just letting things go straight to their subconscious mind and not being filtered by their conscious mind? That's it should be somewhat educated, somewhat learned and enough to say, well, I don't really agree with that because of this. I don't know how that happens, and I don't know how that translates to the bedroom. How does that even get in there? Any idea?
Relationships that we have, our intimate relationships, romantic relationships, most closely mimic the relationships that we had with our caregivers, most often mom or dad, maybe a grandparent, a step parent. And so if you think about it, like whenever you're in a new relationship and it's like, oh, you feel so familiar to me, I feel like I've known you forever. Those are signs that this person reminds you of your mom or dad, your family of origin. And you even hear like baby and the endearing terms that people call each other. Now it's like a thing to call daddy, but that's another story. But that those terms like people use, it's signs that like we're feeling that state of comfort, and with that comes all the wonderful things that mom and dad did, and then also all of the things that were traumatic that mom and dad did. No matter what the intention of your parents were, we've all had traumatic experiences as children. It's just part of life,
of course.
And so, but because of the rose-colored glasses, the dopamine, the serotonin, the adrenaline that's happening during that period of love, we don't see the negatives. We only see the positives, and falling madly in love with this person. And then one day you wake up and it's like, oh shit, who is this in front of me? Like, why am I so triggered? Like, why can't I stand this person anymore? It's like, well, that was there the whole time. But it's people that are in a conscious relationship can take these types of situations and work together to heal the wounding that we have from childhood, and we can really create epic relationships. And that's what I love to help my clients do. It's like we're literally creating the relationship of the modern era, where, because the old way of relating isn't working anymore. We see just divorce rates, people being single longer. There's people just not even desiring to be in a relationship because they've only seen bad examples of it. But I'm actually really optimistic about relationships. I think that we're in a time and place where it's so exciting that we have the information available that we do now, such as the stuff that I work with people around, that we can create relationships that transform our lives, that help us self-actualize, that are the foundation, the fuel for the rest of our lives. Like, we're in a time on the planet where people, there really isn't an excuse for us to not self-actualize. Like, we have everything that we could possibly need. I mean, of course, there are places around the world where people are in abject poverty and there's a lot of really bad things happening, but it's unnecessary, right? Because of the amount of wealth and the amount of food that exists here. Like, it's completely unnecessary that is happening.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you. And if you, I'm sure you've already seen Maslow's hierarchy example, which, it makes total sense to me. I mean, when you're trying to survive, you can't become grow more spiritually because you're too busy surviving, right? So but you're absolutely right. Most of the world really is doing much better than they were 25, 50 years ago, or certainly much better than 100 years ago, and there is certain areas that still need a lot of help. And there probably always will be certain areas that need help, but I totally agree with you on that subject. So, is there any way that men can or maybe you could give us an example of some way that they can become better at hearing and understanding what their partner's needs are.
Yeah, this is great. We were having this discussion in my Man on Fire group last night, and one of the men that is newer to the group, was asking how he could kind of break through with his wife. He's like, I want more intimacy, and she's really in her head, and she wants everything structured. And several of the men that have been with me quite some time, and they're mentors for the other men, they all pitched in and they said, listen to her.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, my wife used to complain and say, we never talk. And I would be like, what do you mean we don't talk? We talk all the time. And he said, but once I took this program and I understood what active listening is and holding space for her is, and like actually being present with her and just allowing her to speak, like that changed everything. I mean, Man After Man was like, I saved my relationship by learning how to listen.
Mm-hmm. No, I get it. And I've had to do that more and more as the years went on too. And I think that's so very important. I mean, and intimacy can, for me as well, it can be described as being together with someone in the moment. That we don't have to have sex, but if we're together discussing something and I'm totally into what you're saying, and vice versa, we're together in that moment, and that's also very, very intimate. In my viewpoint, at least. So I know, and it goes both ways. I know some women that aren't very good listeners either. But I still astounds me when my stepdaughter, when they get together with 3 or 4 other people her age that are in their early 30s, they will talk and chat as fast as can be, and they're texting to someone else, and they're all hearing what each other is saying and understanding. Like that's never would never happen in my network. I'm more of a one-on-one person, or maybe a couple people. But so there's obviously a lot better skills involved there too, with listening and hearing with women, and which I think is innate in their nature too, with the ability to take on more tasks, multitasking roles with children and what have you. Not that men can't multitask, but it's a lot more difficult, I believe.
I would have to agree. Yes. And it's a good thing for women to remember that, and I think a lot of women get very frustrated with men because, in their mind, like, you should be able to do a million things at once and a million miles an hour. And, it's just a different way of viewing things.
No, absolutely. And those are generalities, of course. It's
Of
not
course.
not everybody is the same. But I do see that a fair amount. Those kind of get complaints from each other about the other, So do you think that, or why do you think maybe some couples are becoming more complacent in their sexual relationship these days? Are they just too busy? Or I know most families need 2 incomes, to make ends meet. Is it just that, or are there other things?
Yeah, people are tired. People are distracted. They're getting dopamine hits from other places. It's like there's constant social media and email
TikTok.
and text messages, and the new thing on Netflix, right? Like it's constant stimulation everywhere. So in some ways, it's like we don't need sex for entertainment. I think at one point it may have been like, well, there's nothing else to do, like let's fuck.
Oh no, for sure, right? Well, let's go have a romp in the bedroom. Oh no, hang on, there's a good movie on tonight.
Right. But what comes along with that is a lot of isolation, people feeling really, really lonely. So many people that are in marriages feel really lonely.
Do you think we're mirroring some maybe our parents, because many times we didn't see our parents having sex. We shudder at the fact that we would even think that they would do that anymore when we were old enough. Well, we never saw mom and dad really do that. So we're a little older now. Maybe we should also be a little more like that. Again, that's kind of the subconscious thing. I don't know if you think that we could possibly be doing that as well.
Well, I mean, studies overwhelmingly show people are having less and less sex. People are waiting until a later age to have sex.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So sex is on the decline. And I think a big part of it is people want more for their lives. And when sex isn't doing it for them, they're just like, well, I would rather not do it then. We have so many options now. We have such clear pathways to success, to having it all. And if sex is an area of our life where we're just like, it's really not that good, I'm going to put my focus and attention on something that is amazing instead. Like, if I'm crushing it at work, that feels better than having sex where I'm not crushing it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I've seen that too. Where either person involved in the relationship tends to it's more important. They're getting their high or their rush from completing projects at work or accolades at work, and then when it comes back to home, it's like, I just need to relax, and I'm not into that forever, sort of thing, or it would seem. It's interesting to think that. And some people, they have different viewpoints on what constitutes good sex too, and they become accustomed to only doing certain things, certain positions, never trying anything new. And I was wondering also if you think that the openness nowadays for men and women to talk about, self-pleasuring themselves, there was never any sex toy stores around in my town when I was growing up, but there's quite a few now, for example. So it's much more of an open topic, and, in my view, rightly so. But that maybe people are, they don't mind not being in a relationship just to have sex when they can self-pleasure.
Yeah, I think that ties in with sex not being that great. So it's like, okay, I can get off on my own. And for a lot of women, they're like, I'm not getting off when I have sex. So I would rather just do this on my own, because at least I get what I came for. And if
Literally.
and if you're having sex and there's not connection and intimacy and love that's happening, and then people are just like, I could have done this on my own. Like, I can get off on my own. I don't need someone else to get off. Like, if I'm going to have sex with another human being and take on all of this other person, like their emotions, their energy, the physical aspect of them, like their mind, all of it. Like, when we're in that place of sex, like, it needs to be better than what I'm doing on my own. And for most people, it's worse. So there you go.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, that's probably the reason that that's happening. Now, as far as the tantric portion, I haven't really delved into any of that study at all, though it's always kind of been something that I was always planning to try to, learn more about. But my understanding is it's more learning how to, as we discussed earlier, be in the moment with someone else as you're, doing what you're doing, that you're actually, your mind's not elsewhere. You can give more pleasure and accept more pleasure when you're absolutely in the moment. Is that kind of the idea, or maybe you could give us an idea what's the main point or thing with the tantric sex and instead of just regular.
Yeah. So imagine like, okay, somebody that works out regularly. You see that person and you can usually tell, right? It's just kind of like, I can tell like that person works out. Somebody eats super healthy. Like you can see there's a tangible difference in their the way they look physically and the way they carry themselves and just even in their energy, right? And it's sexual development. I look at Tantra as sexual development. It's the same thing as, physical development, nutritional development. It's when you are doing tantric practices, the practices that I give guys are usually about 20 minutes and they do them a few times a week. And they develop this in themselves, just as if they were going to the gym. And then it's like this, it's the way they carry themselves. It's the energy that they have. I'll never forget, there was one, I was in Austin living there. I was leading this Tantra cacao ceremony out of my home. And this guy walks in and I looked up and the brightest, bluest eyes ever. And we locked eyes and it was like this instant chemistry. And then he ended up, he was only in Austin for a couple of weeks and we were just together nonstop, just like making love. And he also trains in Tantra. And so when we first the energy of us being together, the sex itself, it's not like you're doing different positions or things like that, but because we both had cultivated this energy in us over all this time, just coming together created like waves of rushing. It felt like rushes of fire in my body. And it went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. Like even after he was gone, I was still feeling this, just like full body orgasms and like just this intensity because of what all the work that we put in, and it's like 20 minutes a day to get that, no brainer.
Yeah, I guess so. Absolutely. Wow. Awesome. And I don't know if that's one of them, but maybe you could give us an example of one of your biggest success stories working with men.
I love Mark. Mark is super fun. He is a mentor in my program now. Mark came in to work with me. He had recently gotten divorced. He had met a new woman that he was totally infatuated with. Like they were in that infatuation period still. He was high as a kite for this woman. And, she, like, everything about their relationship was compatible except for their sex life. And Mark was accustomed to the typical performative style of sex. And she had experience of sex on another level, on a higher plane. And she let him know, like, this relationship is over unless you fix this. And he came across my site. I don't remember how he found me. I think it was the Google search maybe. And I remember my first call with Mark, and, he was very hesitant because of the price point and he'd never done anything like this. And, I just let him know, I'm like, look, like, you have to decide, are you in or are you out? Like, I only take guys that are committed. So, get back to me if you decide you're in. He came back, he committed, full on committed, like, and he has military background. And so he's got that type of energy of like, I am in. And he did amazing. And so Karen is his fiance. They're engaged now. They've both written testimonials of how their relationship transformed. Wonderful. Yeah. And just how they will have sex for hours. And he went from having premature ejaculation and erectile dysfunction to, sex that goes on. Like they'll have sex all day. They'll set aside a day where they're just like, of course they take some breaks, but
Of course.
like, but they're, and she's just having orgasm after orgasm after orgasm. And they're so playful with their sexuality. That's what I love about them. People, we are so serious when it comes to sex. And I understand why, because we have so much trauma and conditioning around our sexuality that needs to be healed. But Mark came in and he did the work. He healed his shit. And now he has a lot of fun. Like they're always like, he's very creative about their sex life. And I love that about him. He's constantly like reading another book and, he's mentoring the other men and encouraging them.
Oh, wonderful.
So yeah, he's definitely been a highlight.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Yeah, that's nice to hear. And, speaks volumes about the work that you do and how you can help men continue to be in a relationship and grow with their partner. So on that note, I was wondering if you could let us know how that my folks could get a hold of you, any of the listeners here could get a hold of you and maybe partake in any of your coaching.
Yeah, I'm Sarrah Rose. Sarrah has 2 R's. So I'm probably the only Sarrah you'll come across. That's Sarrah. So it makes the Google search easy. So sarrahrose.com, tantricactivation.com goes the same place. I have a podcast, Tantric Activation, on Instagram, Tantric Activation. Twitter, I am Sarrah Rose on LinkedIn, Tantric Activation on Facebook. So I'm everywhere.
Yeah. Excellent. And do you have anything that you can leave for the folks at all, or?
Yeah. Guys, the thing is that I see 100% of the time is this sense of being unworthy to have what you truly desire to have. And that is what is holding you back. It's not anything that she's doing or anything she did. It's all about you and deciding to take the chance, even if you don't believe it right now, you don't believe that you're worthy of having what you really want. Just decide to take a step in that direction. Take a step towards, okay, maybe there's a way for me to get to the point where I do believe it, and do the work necessary. And it's baby steps, right? Like it's just one day at a time, showing up 1%. We don't get to 100% overnight. It's 1% every day, right? And you just keep moving in the right direction. And eventually you look back on your life and it's like 5 years has passed, 10 years has passed. And you're like, fuck, like, wow, it really did make a difference.
Yes, absolutely. Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Sarrah. And for those that are listening, all that information will be down below the video and also on my audio podcast as well. So you won't miss any of that. In case you want to get a hold of Sarrah to do any coaching or any tantric activation, or even just have a quick chat with her to see how she can help, I know she wants to help you, and you've already seen how she can help people and relationships. So thank you so much, Sarrah. I appreciate you coming on, and it was absolutely great talking to you today. I was excited this morning that our chat was coming up. So thank you so much. And I wish you much luck in the future. And I'm sure I don't have to do that because I know you're who you are as a person. You're a strong woman, and I know you'll be very successful. So thank you so much for coming on Men on Fire.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. As always, keep what feels good and dump what doesn't. And remember, live without judgment, give without expectation, and love for no reason. Follow those 3 simple expressions, and you'll be well on your way to an inspirational, intentional, and successful life. Until next time, you're the one.